Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Business Resources for Economic Developers webinar. We're excited to have you join us today. My name is Dr. Mark Novak. I'm the Dean of the Extended Education and Global Outreach Division at California State University in Bakersfield. Our unit focuses on promoting education into foreign countries, and we welcome foreign students to study at CSUB. I'm also a member of the Central California District Export Council. I'm honored to give back to my community as a DEC Council member and to help other colleges and universities increase their student recruitment in foreign markets. Our DEC has 14 members who work closely with the U.S. Commercial Service offices in Fresno, Bakersfield, and Ventura. We educate, advocate, and assist companies to become successful exporters. I'd like to thank the Economic Development Administration for organizing this program. It will offer timely and much needed information to help those affected by drought, storms, and flooding this year. Today, we're going to hear from an outstanding team of trade professionals from the federal and state governments with experience and resources to help you grow your business, increase your revenue through exports, finance exports effectively, and attract foreign investment throughout California. A few housekeeping items before we get started. Please keep your microphone on mute and your camera off unless you are speaking. We will have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. In the meantime, please place your questions in the chat so we may answer them at the end of the session. At that time, you'll also be able to ask questions if they arise. Lastly, please click on the link in the chat to fill out a quick sign-in form. This will allow us to capture your email to send out slides following the webinar. It will also allow us to collect attendance data from this webinar to inform future programming. Now, I'm pleased to introduce the Pacific South Network Regional Director, Colleen Simons, who joins us today to start this program. Colleen, thank you for joining us from San Diego. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Novak, and it's a pleasure to be with you all this morning. And thank you, Dr. Novak, for your service on our District Export Council in Central California, which is our newest District Export Council. We now have 61 across the country. And as you mentioned, the District Export Councils help us with our mission, which is to help companies export overseas and ensure we grow jobs in communities, especially those that every community needs jobs, but some are looking certainly for those jobs more than others to create that opportunity in their county or city or region. So my name, as Dr. Novak mentioned, is Colleen Simons. I'm the director, the regional director for the Pacific South, which includes Central and Southern California, which is why I sit here in San Diego, Nevada, Hawaii, and the U.S. territories in the Pacific. I am thrilled that this program is happening. At Commerce, we have 15 agencies, and one of them is the Economic Development Administration, which is our sister agency. And Melinda and I have worked together for many years and excited to participate in this West Coast program alongside Melinda. Thank you for the collaboration. The only thing I really wanted to mention is our team in Central California has really grown lately and has been elevated to what we think is the appropriate level to serve the community. We now have a supervisory director, which is Ms. Bernadette Rojas. She covers Central Valley and Coastal California and manages a team of directors, one of which is the Fresno director, Andy Cito, the Bakersfield director, Alicia Rios, and Ventura director, Marianne Burke. We appreciate this opportunity, as our team does, to collaborate closely with federal agencies, state agencies like GO-BIZ, and talk about opportunities to export and attract investment to these communities that have been hard hit by floods and other natural disasters. Communities that export are stronger and our economies are stronger when businesses can grow markets beyond their borders. They're more resilient and can withstand the impacts of some of the wildfires and winter storms that we've seen lately, including the torrential rains. So I think that's all I want to say, because I don't want to take any thunder from our team, but we're excited to collaborate. We stand ready to support you all with any international endeavor. Please come to us along with your state counterparts. And we certainly work closely with the EDA to make sure we are supporting the EDOs and the exporters in those communities. So I'm glad our team will have a chance to discuss those export resources available for companies in your regions. And I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Colleen, for your informative, inspiring welcome. We appreciate that. And we're also grateful for all the support you give us here in the Central Valley. We thank you for your service and all you do to help develop the U.S. economy through exports. It's now my pleasure to introduce Emily Desai, Deputy Director of International Affairs and Trade at the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, also known as GO-BIZ. Emily, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Novak. It's a pleasure to be here, and good morning to everyone. Thank you to our friends at EDA for organizing today's webinar and for having us and presenting the opportunity for us to share just a bit more about the International Affairs and Trade team within the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, or GO-BIZ. Many of you are probably familiar with GO-BIZ, the state's lead economic development agency. You may be a little less familiar with the International Affairs and Trade team that I oversee. I'm really pleased to have two members of my team here today who are going to get into more detail about some of our key programs, how we support small business exporters, and how we also help international businesses looking to grow and expand in California. But what you see here are the broad buckets of the work that our team does to really help lead the state's international footprint and strategy with the governor's office and with our lieutenant governor, who by executive order oversees international work for the state of California. So we have the unique opportunity to work both with the governor and the lieutenant governor, as well as cabinet officials across the state of California on really growing California's international trade and investment portfolio. So we do that through a couple of key ways. One is primarily through global collaboration and engagement. So California, as many of you have often probably heard, is the 5th largest economy in the world. We really utilize that economic might to engage with global partners on a range of policy issues, including things like climate change, broader issues around how we can engage with our global partners on issues like that. We're really looking forward, for example, to hosting APEC, the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in San Francisco, where we'll welcome the heads of economies of 26 member economies to California. So opportunities to really engage globally is one of our focus areas. Of course, today, we're really excited to talk about our work supporting small businesses as we help with export promotion efforts. Mariana Guevara on my team is going to be talking more about the resources that we have to support small businesses. And then we also do a lot of work, as I mentioned, to help international companies that are thinking about growing and expanding to California. So we work with those international firms to help them navigate the regulatory environment, incentives, and other resources that might be available for them so they can grow and land successfully here in California. I'll move to the next slide. Just to give you a snapshot of the team responsible for that work, these are the portfolio areas that we work on. The trade representatives that oversee the regional strategies for international affairs and trade, our export promotion efforts, our foreign investment, and then we have an additional portfolio where we really work to focus on immigration integration for the state of California. So we have a new grant that is out to cities and counties to support immigrant integration efforts. So our team touches a lot of different issue areas. We're excited again to have the chance to tell you a bit more about our work and areas where we might collaborate together. And thanks again to the EDA team. I'll turn it back to you, Dr. Novak, so we can ensure plenty of time for the content and the questions.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Emily, for your highlights of why exports and investments are important to the California economy. Now, we're going to our second section of this webinar called Export Expansion. So to kick off this section, I'm pleased to welcome two friends of ours here in the Central Valley, U.S. Commercial Service Bakersfield Office Director, Alicia Rios, and Fresno Office Director, Andy Cito. They will share how the Commercial Service assists with exports, export readiness, and meetings with qualified foreign buyers. Andy and Alicia, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Novak. So what I would like to do is just quickly show you a couple of things that, as a U.S. commercial service, what we offer, and then what we're about, and the collaboration that we do with a lot of our state and federal agencies. As you can see, our goal is going to be to help you connect your companies to the global markets. Next slide, please. So a key thing that I would like for you to remember is export matters. And key thing to remember is that 70% of the world's purchasing power is outside of the United States. So what do we do with that? And how can we be able to help you? As a U.S. commercial service, we are your U.S. government resource to be able to help you compete in a global market. Next slide, please. So as you can see, one of our key programs as part of the U.S. Commercial Service, we have the Global Diversity Export Initiative, which is committed to helping underserved communities in the United States to increase their exports. The GDDI has established partnerships with national organizations to help support these communities. You can find additional information, and actually we have a whole section under trade.gov in regards to key trade missions, key events, and also recorded webinars that will help you maybe present to the underserved community. Next slide, please. So our mission is to grow U.S. exports and increase U.S. jobs. And how do we differ? So we have a worldwide recognition. The U.S. government can open doors where no one else can around the world. So that's key to remember. We have a global network. Our unmatched global network with trade experts in more than 76 markets, and we can provide on-the-ground knowledge and connections. And then, of course, we are result-driven. Our expert in-person counseling is unparalleled and designed to help companies succeed in global markets. Next slide, please. So we have a global presence, and this is key to remember in regards to how we are able to provide resources. We have 106 U.S. offices and 127 foreign locations. So as you can see, all the blue dots, it's where we're located, and we have industry experts. We have individuals as part of the U.S. Embassy that are ready to help U.S. companies. Next slide, please. So one thing to remember about the U.S. Commercial Service is that the world is open for business, and our services include export counseling. So as part of the export counseling, we are able to, as you can see, there's a couple of dots underneath each slide, but I will just highlight a few. For export counseling, we can help you with export documentation requirements and import regulation for foreign markets. We can provide market intelligence. What that means is we can conduct background checks on potential buyers and distributors. And this is key to companies who are maybe new or receiving requests for, quotes. So before a company does anything, they can contact us and we can make sure it's not a scam. And one of our key services is the business matchmaking. So we can connect you with pre-screened potential partners, and that's very key to understand. In addition to helping companies promote their product and services to prospective buyers at trade events worldwide. And all this information, once again, is located under our trade.gov. And then another key thing that, that you might or that you might not be aware of is our commercial diplomacy. So this benefits, companies benefit from coordinated U.S. government engagement with foreign government to protect U.S. business interests. So we have an advocacy program that's able to assist companies. And then, of course, we have all of our programs and services, a list of trade events under trade.gov. Next slide, please. So what I'd like to do next is play a 2-minute video, and it really encompasses of what we do as part of the U.S. Commercial Service. Go ahead, play the video. Can we turn on the sound? It looks like we're having some technical difficulties. But what I wanted to do is just kind of showcase one of the many videos that we have under our trade.gov and for companies who are ready to export. And it really takes you through a lot of the different, components that companies are that should be, should be taken into account as they enter the journey of exporting. As I mentioned, we have export solutions to help U.S. exporters create successful international sales and strategies. And once again, all of this information is located on our trade.gov, and you will be able to find, additional videos in regards to, how does our market intelligence work? What documentations, are required, but everything will be found under the, and what I'll do is I'll put the link in the chat, and then you can watch it at your own convenience. So I want to thank you for the opportunity, and now I'll hand it over to my colleague, Andy Cito. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Alicia. Melinda, am I able to share my screen? If I can share my screen, I can play the video. If not, we can put the link in the chat.
Let's just put the link in the chat.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay, we'll do. So the video is going to go over 4 areas of exporting basics and are you ready to export? So from here on, I'm going to take over and start with the 5th area of assessing your export readiness. So there are some areas in reference to you where you can take an assessment, and they're online, as Alicia mentioned earlier, the trade.gov export solutions, where you can assess and access these assessments for whether you're new to export, if you're an expanding exporter looking to get into new markets, and if you're an experienced exporter. So they're all different varieties of export readiness that's available for you as a business out there or a service provider. So any of for your EDOs and the chambers that are listening, one step to take for a lot of these businesses that you're assisting in your areas, it's good to take these assessments going forward, and so that way they can get a good understanding. Next slide, please. Okay, the next area for this is the Basic Guide to Exporting, which is a very good resource and a very good magazine that provides a lot of exporting information and topics within this guide. Not only is it good for businesses, it's good for us as trade professionals as well. So for you as EDOs and chambers, if you're interested, because a lot of chambers of commerce also do certificate of origins for their clients in their areas. So this is a good booklet for you to read through and understand the different areas and allowing your businesses and your business communities to understand how to identify their markets. And creating the export plan is also a key component for any business that's out there. So it's always good to have a business plan, but it also bodes well for you to have an export plan as well. Next slide, please. Okay, some of the services that U.S. Commercial Service offers is one of these, and they're all under the fee for service basis, is website globalization and review. We do have a program where they'll look at your website, a company's website, and review it for international purposes and making sure there's areas that they can identify for technical and business process improvements. And then within U.S. Commercial Service website, we do have a listing under our e-commerce business service providers where when you receive this report back and any areas that need to be improved upon, you can go into this website here in the e-commerce BSP to find some business service providers that can assist you in taking care of those areas that need improvement. Next slide, please. Another area that we are very actively pursuing businesses in these areas is our Rural Export Center. We do have a program under the Rural Americas Intelligence Service for Exporters, which is the RAISE Intel here. So not only do you get a person that's near you as a trade specialist under U.S. Commercial Service to assist you in your endeavors in reference to exporting, whether you're new, growing, expanding into the export markets. But then if you happen to be in your customer and your client happens to be in a rural area, and we can also connect them with the Rural Export Center as well. And then this program here gives us some additional services that can be targeted towards those businesses in those rural areas. So what we're trying to do, not only under the Global Diversity Export Initiative to assist those markets, but then also we are heavily involved in trying to support our rural businesses as well. Next slide, please. Okay, finding foreign buyers. That's the key component of what U.S. Commercial Service will assist your clients in your areas. By providing these services here, most of these services are fee-for-service as well. We can do single company promotions where U.S. companies were promotional service to help increase the awareness of their product or service in the specific market. We can do international partner search, as Alicia mentioned earlier, which a lot of our clients, our businesses end up doing. They'll do an international partner search, and we'll get our U.S. commercial service offices, our foreign offices involved, and they'll identify partners that are listed for you to work with. Featured U.S. exporter listings, business service provider listings that I just mentioned, and then our main service here is the Gold Key service, where you can get connected to distributors or buyers in foreign markets in country. Next slide, please. Okay, one of the biggest events that U.S. Commercial is involved with on an annual basis is a program called Trade Winds. Last year, it was in the ASEAN region. This year, it's going to be in the Eurasia region. So you're going to be accessing Europe. And the main area is in Istanbul, Turkey, which is in May 13th and 15th in 2024. So this is the main area where they're going to be doing most of the conferences, the business development activities, and so forth. The other stops that they'll be doing besides Turkey is you can either go beforehand to Romania or Denmark, and then after the main conference in Turkey, you can attend an additional stop in Poland or Italy. So this is one of the biggest trade missions that U.S. Commercial Service is involved with. They bring in a lot of different areas of different countries, foreign buyers, government officials that are out there as well, for governments that are looking to acquire goods and services. So if you are interested or you have clients in your areas that are interested in attending a trade mission, this is an opportunity to take a look at one of the largest trade missions that U.S. Commercial is involved with. Next slide, please. Okay, this just goes over the same. We talk about the trade events. So we do have these 4 areas of certified trade missions, trade show representation, if for whatever reasons, the representation, the economic development organizations with the ability to increase their marketing exposure at an overseas trade event. And this area here is important because it allows you to show what either your economic development organization is all about under foreign direct investment, or even businesses to allow U.S. Commercial Service to represent their items at a foreign trade show. So that's a good program to be involved with if you aren't able to attend those in person yourself. They have the international buyer programs, and you also have international trade fairs throughout as well. Next slide, please. This slide here just represents, in this picture here that is on the left corner here, it just represents that sometimes it takes a village to grow. And what we're trying to show here is with our federal partners and our state partners, we need all types of services to help us in reference to anything that you're trying to do on the export activity side. So you don't have to do it alone. We do have a lot of services, a lot of resources that are available to assist you as you move forward. Next slide, please. And this is the most important part. If you are looking to seek services, this is where you can find the closest U.S. Commercial Service office near you, whether it's in country here In the office locations, you'll just go to trade.gov and click on the Contact Us slide. And then you'll do this drop down here. And most importantly, you'll see all of the California offices here. And the most important two are you're seeing that leads off California is Bakersfield and Fresno. And then we have our coastal region as well in Ventura here. But anywhere throughout the state, you can definitely access U.S. commercial service. We have 15 offices in the state here out of the 106 U.S. offices. If you're looking for different areas in reference to other countries, and then you can click on those drop downs for those regions as well. Next slide, please. And this is our team here, your Central Valley and coastal areas. So we got Richard, Alicia, and it talks about all our different counties that we cover.
Where are we, in the car or the, oh, right here, gotcha. Is it up? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, next slide. I think I'm turning it back over to Dr. Novak.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Andy and Alicia. I want to say my own personal experience with the commercial service was so positive, and that was one of the reasons I was so pleased to join the deck, is that I used the Gold Key service to go to 2 countries I knew nothing about at the time. And in one case, going to China, I had the opportunity to meet some tremendous professionals there from the U.S. team. And that relationship, that set of relationships there led to about 15 years worth of ongoing exchanges between, I was at San Jose State at the time, and some of the Chinese government offices. So I can only endorse as strongly as possible the Gold Key service, and also want to thank you all for putting some of those good links into your slides, because people can access those later if they've given us the information about their email address and so forth. So thank you for your excellent presentation on many services and supports that the federal government has available to increase exports. And thank you again for all you do here in the Central Valley to help businesses grow and to create jobs. Now, I'd like to invite Mariana Guevara, International Trade Program Specialist and STEP Support at GO-BIZ, to tell us about these programs. Mariana, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Novak. Hello, everyone. My name is Mariana Guevara. I work for the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, also known as GO-BIZ, in the International Unit. Today, I will be presenting a more in-depth view into the California State Trade Expansion Program. Next slide, please. California STEP is funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Small Business Administration, and it is administered by us at GO-BIZ within the International Unit. The purpose of STEP is to increase the number of small business exporters, as well as increase the volume of goods and services they export. Next slide, please. In order to be eligible for STEP, you have to be a for-profit business, organized or incorporated in the U.S., majority operations in California, be exporting goods or services of U.S. origin that have at least 51% U.S. content under the U.S. commercials definition, meet the SBA small business side standards, which vary either by number of employees or annual revenue, registered and in good standing with the State of California Secretary of State. If you're a sole proprietor, we check the other regulatory agencies. In business for at least 1 year at the time that the activity takes place, and of course, have sufficient resources to bear the costs associated with trade, including the cost of packaging, shipping, freight forwarding, and custom brokers. At the time of the application, a company agrees to provide information as a result of participating in the STEP grant. Next slide. The STEP grant comes into 2 portions, the first one being STEP events. These are pre-selected export promotion activities supported by GO-BIZ. These are going to be international trade shows, foreign trade missions, business matchmaking events, seminars, showcasing, etc. They have a predetermined funding amount, and if it's a California pavilion, they are based by space availability. These events are going to be managed by the trade representatives, which were presented in an earlier slide by Emily. So we have 3 trade representatives covering the globe. On the other hand, we have the export voucher. This is where the companies can propose their own activities. It is a reimbursement for up to 75% of pre-approved expenses with a maximum limit of $10,000 per federal funding year. The funding for this program is very competitive, so it's very common that companies are awarded of a lesser amount than requested based on the number of applications and the available amount of funding. Next slide, please. And if we can just skip to the next one as well. Perfect. So for STEP events, we are currently promoting 3 events that I'm aware of, and if not, we have a few more that are coming up. So we have a California Pavilion for Green Expo, a California Pavilion for Arab Health, and a California Pavilion for Singapore Air Show. This allows companies an opportunity to leverage the California brand for added marketing and visibility, leverage global networking opportunities within the pavilion itself, and of course, connect with other like-minded California companies to share best practices, collaborate, and share tricks of the trade. Alongside of the benefits of the state of California taking care of the logistics, the planning, etc., there's additional benefits such as potential partnerships with the U.S. Commercial Service. So additional benefits, and of course, reducing the cost to participate in the trade show by a good chunk of money. So there's a good amount of benefits of participating within our pavilions. Next slide, please. Here we have some feedback regarding our previous STEP events. So we had the Asia Advanced Manufacturing Mission, the Indo-Defense Trade Mission, and Asia Trade Winds, all which are, I believe, are events under the U.S. Commercial Service, which we supported with funds. And then we have World Smart Energy Week. This is one where we planned to have the California Pavilion, and the benefits included presenting the company to the Lieutenant Governor, doing a product showcase, etc. So that's just some feedback we received from companies that participated in STEP events. Next slide. As far as the application process for the STEP events, we recommend companies to review the STEP events website on export.business.ca.gov, review if the STEP event is right for you, review the eligibility criteria, and review the program guidelines to ensure that you meet the criteria. The company then submits the application before the event recruiting deadline, which is posted on the grant portal and on the event website. They're then evaluated and notified if the company is pre-approved for the event and the next steps. The company then executes on the event and comes back to us and provides us the outcomes. Next slide. We also have, as I mentioned earlier, the export voucher. It's a maximum reimbursement of up to $10,000. And the application rounds vary depending on when the activity takes place. So if you have activities that are taking place between October 1st through December 31st, you would apply during round 1. During the next round, January 1st through, it would be for activities implemented January 1st through March 31st, et cetera, et cetera. It is 1 application per round and until you hit the $10,000. Funding consideration is based on the availability of funds, number of submitted applications, and merits of the application. Next slide, please. Here we have an example of the type of activities that are reimbursed through the export voucher. There are going to be international trade shows or trade missions. So for those companies that have some experience exporting and are ready to take their product or services abroad and they want to do it at an international level, we reimburse for the cost of participation fees such as the raw space, the booth build out, catalog listing fees, interpretation fees at the trade show. As Andy shared, there's a vast number of services that the U.S. Commercial Service offers. We reimburse for those services One that we get quite frequently is a gold key service, and we're very fond of that service from the U.S. Commercial Service. We reimburse for those costs. So if you're a company here today based in California that meet the eligibility and are thinking in applying to one of those activities that Andy mentioned, consider the STEP grant as a way to fund that activity. We also have sample shipping. So if you're a company that is either shipping your product to a potential distributor, to a potential wholesaler, or you're shipping your product abroad to take to a trade show, those costs are very high and we could reimburse for those fees. Another expense is compliant testing and product registration. So if you need to get your product registered in order to enter a market, if you need to do the trademark, intellectual property, all those costs would be reimbursed. If we can go to the next slide, please. International marketing material and website globalization in e-commerce is an expense that we see quite often and very, very often with companies that are new to exporting, just because it's a way to start getting inquiries from abroad. So international marketing material, if you're going to be doing social media ads to target a foreign market, those would be eligible. Translating your product packaging, we've reimbursed for those for those services as well. Website globalization and e-commerce. If you need to add a plugin into your website so that you can accept foreign currency, that is something that we would reimburse. Again, translating your website, doing international search engine optimization so that when people abroad or potential clients abroad are looking up your product can come up as one of the potential search options. So all those things, anything that can be seen as an export promotion activity is something that can be considered for reimbursement under the California export voucher. Ex-Im Bank is also a federal agency. We reimburse for their credit insurance premiums. So if you are seeking to sell to if you already have a sell and you have a buyer that wants to do export credit, we are able to reimburse for those premiums. And of course, last one here on the allowable expenses, the export research tools. So if you're going to be subscribing to a database for market research, we reimburse for that. Next slide, please. Some ineligible expenses, and apologies, the layout got a little funky being converted into a PDF, but some ineligible expenses to note is that we don't reimburse for any travel associated expenses. So unfortunately, no meals, lodging, or transportation. Additionally, no printing material fees, fees for shipping products to be sold in the market. So it's very specific that it has to be shipping as a sample versus a sale. General business operation expenses. So unfortunately, if you're a company that is in the startup phase of getting yourself set up, so rent, equipment, inventory costs, those would not be eligible. We're looking to fund companies that are seeking to do export promotion. Any activities completed by staff on payroll, and any activities solely focus on the domestic market. Next slide, please. How to apply for the export voucher. So we encourage companies to reach out to a technical assistance provider like an SBDC or a Chamber of Commerce and really come up with an export strategy and plan. Just because this is a reimbursement grant, so we need the company to have a plan in place. We encourage companies to review the eligibility criteria and review our program guidelines, which are posted on our website. They're very detailed as to what is allowed, examples, what is not allowed, examples of that as well. Then you apply before the activity takes place and within the round timeline. GO-BIZ then evaluates the application and notifies company of the grant amount and next steps. The company performs the pre-approved activity and documents participation. So you're making sure to collect the invoices, proof of payment, proof of activity, so photo of a booth if you're doing a trade show, etc. Then you come back to us, provide us the outcomes, provide us the documentation, and then request the reimbursement, which will come to you as a physical check. Next slide, please. Here I got a little jumbled up, but on our website, it is export.business.ca.gov. I will put that link in the chat after my presentation. You can find all of our resources there. So we have our program guidelines, an application process guide, a training video, and it's going to guide you through the whole application process. And it's going to guide you how to get to the grant portal to submit your application. Next slide, please. Oh, and this is our grant portal. It just shows that you can go in and create an application, and you have to choose between the export voucher application and the STEP event application. Next slide, please. Okay, as of right now, we have committed majority of our funds on the export voucher side, but we do have STEP events available that you can check out on our website. As far as additional funding to come, we're hoping to have applications available come early in the fall, but you can start preparing now by going to our website at export.business.ca.gov to either become familiar with the application process or subscribe to our newsletter to be informed once the applications go live. Next slide, please. If you're a company that has not exported and you're wondering if STEP is right for you, we still encourage you to come to us, meet with technical assistance providers, create a plan, and you can still take advantage of the STEP grant. You can do website globalization, international marketing. So there is an opportunity for you to utilize it. We also encourage you to visit all of our other resources from our partners, such as the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, we currently do not provide the planning and export strategy on the GO-BIZ side, but we do have a page on our website that connects you to those that can. So of course, reach out to the U.S. Commercial Service, reach out to SBDCs, reach out to all your local technical providers. And I believe the next slide is the final slide. Perfect. So my name is Mariana Guevara. Thank you all for your time. If you have any questions on the information I presented today, or you are wondering if you are eligible for the program, please don't hesitate to reach out. My email is step@gobiz.ca.gov. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mariana. It's Dr. Novak here again. And, I've been in the education export space for probably 20 years now. And the services you provide and the grants you provide are absolutely exceptional. Anybody who's thinking about doing trade fairs or trade shows abroad should contact you because the support you give is tremendous. And we have a saying, if you're not there, you're not there. Somebody else will be. So if you have any thoughts out there in the audience about going and doing one of these trade fairs, and maybe money is an issue and you think one of these grants might help you, please contact Mariana and the STEP program. It's really a tremendous opportunity. So thank you very much again for your presentation and all the information you gave, and hope people will be contacting you to follow up. To close the export expansion session, I welcome Josh Eddy from the California Department of Food and Agriculture. Josh, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Novak. And thank you, everyone, for being here. It's a great opportunity to learn about all the great resources that California and our federal partners have to expand kind of international expansion for the variety of businesses that we serve. Again, I'm Josh Eddy with the California Department of Food and Agriculture. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So the WSADA is the Western United States Agricultural Trade Association. It's a nonprofit trade association which receives federal funding from the U.S. Department of Agriculture to assist agricultural exporters within the United States. The Western region, next slide, please, consists of 16 kind of member states covering everything from California to Guam to New Mexico and Montana. So these are my colleagues, and we work collectively to provide a wealth of programming to businesses throughout the region. Next slide, please. Our participants are typically small to medium-sized agribusinesses. This is everything from processed food manufacturers, wine companies, beverage companies, and even farmers such as tree fruit companies in the Central Valley. We provide everything from processed to raw agricultural products in terms of export assistance. To be able to access some of the fundings that we have as part of these programs is the company needs to definitely be headquartered in the Western United States, in California, since we want them to be registered here in California. And products, just like Mariana mentioned, must be 50% or more U.S. grown agricultural product. And that is excluding water and packaging to make sure that we are promoting U.S. agricultural products abroad. Next slide, please. We really encourage everyone in terms of our vast stakeholders to really kind of engage your clients and have your companies on board with WSATA. So on the WSATA website, which is wasata.org, there's an easy way for companies to register for My WSATA account, which basically puts them in the network to be able to provide our services, which really focus on learn, connecting, and competing in terms of export education, providing resources to be competitive internationally, and also providing opportunities to meet with foreign buyers. So the website is really kind of that key entrance for companies to kind of get exposed to the variety of services that WSATA and the California Department of Food and Agriculture provide. Next slide, please. So the program does actually provide results. In terms of our results from 2021, we had over almost 5,000 buyer introductions. So these are actually connecting individuals with buyers and sellers. And we had over 300 million in export sales generated by participants. Over 525 companies participated. A vast majority of those are California. So we're about 270, almost more than half of that in terms of overall participation. Next slide, please. So the two key programs that I would like to feature for WSATA is the Global Connect program. Next slide. And this focuses on activities that myself and my colleagues in the Western region conduct in terms of international trade shows. We participate in a wide variety of shows, all the major food shows globally, including Gulf Food, Anuga, CL China, CL Paris, really providing opportunities for a low-cost opportunity for companies to participate in some international promotions. Not only do we have international trade shows that we're able to tap into, but also we do inbound and outbound trade missions, which is our next slide. That also focuses on activities of connecting buyers and sellers. So in a typical event, we have one coming up actually next week. A group of ASEAN buyers will be traveling to Portland to meet with companies in Oregon and then visiting Sacramento, Oakland, and Los Angeles, where they'll meet with over 40 California companies on one-on-one format in speed dating. These are low-cost opportunities for buyers and suppliers to be able to meet and be able to see how that product is really is it accepted to a foreign audience? Is there interest? Is pricing right, etc.? Next slide, please. The other program that we have is the Fund Match program, and this is very similar to the STEP program, but very unique for food and agricultural producers. Again, this funding is provided by the U.S. Department of Agriculture to WSATA, which is kind of the management agency for these funds to be able to provide these services to businesses. Next slide, please. So as a first-time business, you can get up to $50,000 in reimbursement for promotional expenses, and I'll cover some of those promotional expenses shortly. But after your first year participating in the program, you can access up to $300,000 in reimbursements. And that reimbursement can be anything from trade show reimbursements, labeling changes when it's required by the market, in-store promotions, advertising. We have a handful of companies that are spending $600,000 plus in export marketing, and these again are small to medium-sized businesses that are receiving reimbursement up to $300,000. And this program is available internationally for those key markets, so it's really an opportunity to help companies expand. Next slide, please. Eligibility, again, you need to be a small business according to SBA guidelines. You need to be licensed and operating for the last year, so you actually have to demonstrate that you are a business in good standing and been in business for over a year, and meet all the product requirements in terms that you're 50% or more U.S. agricultural product, you own the brand or have permission to represent the brand, and that internationally that the product is clearly labeled product of the United States. There's some clarity there, but we can talk about that later. Next slide, please. So the process is pretty simple. Companies will go through the My WSADA account on the website. There's an application fee of $250, and then basically it goes through a kind of a process where the application is reviewed, it's approved. The companies will pay a 6% administrative fee on the amount of funding they're requesting. So if they're requesting $300,000 in reimbursement, their fee for their administrative fee would be 6% of that. They would conduct activities, they would submit claims with all the required documentation, they would complete surveys, and then they would get a reimbursement sent to them from the WSADA organization. Next slide, please. Some of the expenses international, just like Mariana discussed, freight and shipping is definitely covered. Pre-approved international trade missions, the USDA, just like our Department of Commerce, friends, does a wide variety of international trade missions, and also WSADA facilitates trade missions as well that become eligible for reimbursement. Label and packaging modifications when there is a requirement in the market. A lot of first-time exporters, when they are exporting to a market, just like Canada, do not meet the labeling requirements for the market because the labels need to be infringed. So you're either stickering your product or you're needing to change the label. This program will support those modifications in terms of reimbursement, up to 50%. We already spoke about advertising, website, web page production, international trade shows, and more. There's a wealth of services that are available. The WSADA's website has a fund match guide, which details kind of all of the eligibility for reimbursement that's available. Very similar to some of the programs that STEP provides. Next slide, please. One of the best things about the program is that it also supports some domestic trade shows expenses. And so for us here in California, definitely the Natural Products Expo West in Anaheim, the Western Food Service Show in Los Angeles, as well as previously the France Seafood Show, which was in San Francisco, were kind of key shows for companies that are just starting out to expand domestically, to expand regionally, statewide, was to participate in trade shows like this. Very expensive trade shows, booths are around $10,000 each. But since there's such an international exposure at these shows in terms of foreign attendance, certain select international trade shows are eligible for reimbursement as well. So these companies would be reimbursed 50% of their booth cost and other rental costs associated with furniture, booth build out, et cetera. So it's a great opportunity for companies to really kind of launch domestically. Next slide, please. The annual program timeline, this is our 2023 program year. So applications for 2024 will begin next month, August. It will start. It's a rolling application period. We do have a significant amount of funding to be able to award companies. Again, we have over 250 participants in the program receiving funds directly. The program year is the calendar year, January to December. The last day to submit claims for companies is February of the next year, and the surveys are due April 1st. Next slide, please. Application and fund match guide, again, are all on the WSADA website, which is www.wasada.org. Again, provides some great information about the program. And I would highly encourage you, if you have companies that would be interested in the program, to kind of really review the fund match guide, which is a downloadable PDF that talks through the process completely. And we can also set up a consultation with our team at WSADA to really kind of walk companies through the process. Next slide, please. There's also claims and videos that can help companies go through the process as well to kind of understand what are some of the requirements of the program and how it can best benefit them, as well as assisting them in terms of filling out kind of the claim submissions, the documentation that's needed, et cetera, kind of like that technical assistance that Mariana mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. And that covers pretty quickly the services offered for the food and agricultural exporters here in the state of California. So thank you so much, and I'll turn it back to you, Dr. Novak.
Thank you, Josh. For somebody not familiar with the agricultural side of things, this is very, very impressive, and there's so many wonderful opportunities for people to get funding to participate in international exports. So thanks for your presentation and for telling us all about your programs. The next session will show you how you can finance exports effectively with the support of the federal government. I'm honored to welcome Greg Moore, Export-Import Bank of the United States. Greg, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Novak. If we could go to the next slide, please. XM is a U.S. federal government agency. We talk about ourselves as an independent agency insofar that we are largely self-funded through working capital guarantee fees, loan guarantee fees, and insurance premiums. The bank is headquartered in Washington. We have 12 regional offices. I represent one of those, and I cover the Central Valley of California. We facilitate the growth of U.S. jobs by supporting U.S. export sales. So it's jobs through exports. And we go by a principle called additionality, which is to say, if there is a deal that the private sector will not cover on its own, XM will step in and try and fill that gap to level the playing field for U.S. companies trying to compete with overseas competition. Next slide, please. Ways XM can help is one, by improving your competitiveness in selling to overseas channels such as distributors or retailers, or it could be a one-off sale to an end user, by ensuring or protecting open account sales against payment default, so that if the buyer, your foreign buyer, is given payment terms and you extend, you ship to them, but you haven't been paid yet because you've extended payment terms. So that's very risky for you, the exporter or the seller, exporting from the US. So, but it also can help you increase your sales by providing payment flexibility to your buyer, especially for recurring buyers like distributors and retailers. So, to improve your competitiveness, we help greatly mitigate that payment risk by ensuring your open account export sale. And by that, I mean a sale where you have provided payment terms such as 30 days or 60 days or 90 days to your overseas buyer. And then the second way is, and I'll let the next presenter, who is with the SBA, go into this in more detail, because they specifically help provide export working capital to small businesses. We at XM do the same thing, but there are parameters that we use that SBA does not. I won't get into that for this presentation. They do an excellent job, but we can provide pre-export working capital financing, or we facilitate that, I should say. We don't act as the direct lender. If a bank comes in and is interested in funding a transaction, we can provide a guarantee to back that funding for up to 90%. And finally, for deals I would say are worth more than $1 million in the dollar amount of an individual sale, say for farming equipment, for example, or any type of heavy equipment, capital goods, what have you. Say the purchase order is for more than $1 million, and the buyer doesn't need 30 or 60 or 90 days. He needs 2 years or 3 years or 5 years to pay. We can facilitate that buyer, that type of an arrangement by financing the buyer, by getting the buyer a loan through one of our lenders. All right. And the lender will pay out you, the exporter, upon shipment. Typically, you get paid 100%. And this is after the foreign buyer has made a 15% upfront down payment. And then the 85% balance is financed by a loan that is guaranteed by the Exim Bank. And again, that principle of additionality, many domestic lenders are not going to make foreign loans of that type, where they have to maintain first lien rights on the equipment itself throughout the duration of the loan, or while it's still any monies are still outstanding. And so they're not going to do that without a government guarantee. Next slide, please. This is saying, how can XM assist you? So again, if you need financing to fulfill orders, for example, if you need to finance the production of inventory, or if you're a wholesaler, the purchase of inventory, our working capital loan guarantee and helping you get set up with a working capital export lender is our solution to that. And if you need to extend credit to your overseas buyer in order to remain competitive with other overseas vendors, then we can insure your export receivables. And I think we're going to slide number 10 from here, if we can, Melinda.
Not sure which one that is. This was the next one.
Okay, can we scroll down? Just slide by slide. Okay, let's stick with this. The export credit insurance, which I've been talking about, again, it covers receivables generated from export sales to protect against non-payment by your buyer. So you ship on 60-day terms, the shipment goes out, something happens to the buyer, something unforeseen. Maybe there's a new quota erection at customs in the buyer's country, in the importing country. Maybe the buyer's bank has suddenly withdrawn its line of credit. Maybe the buyer has a concentration of customers and their largest customer or largest two customers have stopped paying them. Those are all reasons that buyers suddenly can't make payment on an order, on something they've ordered. So the insurance is there to protect against those unforeseen circumstances, and by the same token, enable you to be competitive by extending payment flexibility to your overseas buyers. If after all, you're saying, well, we need payment cash in advance, that's great. But if you're, say, a vendor from Italy or England or someplace else comes in and says, for your similar product, we'll offer 60-day terms, just because of the payment arrangement, they may go with the other vendor. And so the credit insurance is largely there to help you remain competitive in foreign markets. Next slide, please. So I think this is just a repetition of what I've already said. It's a sales tool by helping you remain competitive, excuse me. It greatly mitigates your payment risk or payment exposure, and it's a good financial aid in terms of borrowing money from a lender, because government insured receivables are perceived by many lenders to be an excellent source of collateral. And I see Dr. Novak, which means I might be over my time limit. Please tell me, doctor, if that's the case. But otherwise, I'll ask Melinda to go to the next slide.
Greg, if you could do a slide or two and then wrap it up, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, let's wrap it up. I'm just going to say a few quick things. Your product has to have at least 50% US content to be eligible for US support, for Ex-Im Bank support. The product or service has to emanate from the United States and to a foreign destination. The billing, the invoice has to be prepared in the United States, and the billing address has to be a foreign address. We have something called a country limitation schedule, which will show you which countries were eligible to support, which transactions for which countries were eligible to support or not. Again, it's a country limitation schedule. And if we can scroll down to the next to last slide, I just like to leave my contact information, if that's all right. There I am. That's my number and my email address. Please feel free to reach out to me anytime with questions about this. Thank you.
Greg, thank you so much. It really, you've given us so much useful information, and I hope people who are interested in doing export will contact you and find out how they can get the insurance that you provide. Next up, please join me in welcoming Michael Fazio from the U.S. Small Business Administration. Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Novak. It's a pleasure to be here with everybody. I'm just going to give a brief overview of what the U.S. Small Business Administration, the SBA, does to support the small business exporter community. So I'm going to cover 4 specific things, some in more detail than others, but the most important slide is at the very end, which contains my contact information. So when we get to that point, if there are additional questions, comments, or remarks, you can find me. So I'm going to talk about the STEP grant, which you heard about a little bit earlier. I'm going to talk about our 3 export finance programs, which includes Export Express, the International Trade Loan, and then the Export Working Capital Program. Next slide, please. So I'll start out by talking about STEP. All I want to say here is that this is a grant program that we administer nationwide. And as you heard earlier from Mariana, California does participate. They do a wide variety of things to support the small business exporter community. So I encourage you to reach out to them directly to find out more information beyond the very good detailed presentation that she did earlier today. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to get more specific about our export loan guarantee programs. There are 3 of them, and the smallest but the most flexible is our Export Express program. It's the smallest because it is limited to up to $500,000 in financing, whereas SBA overall has a $5 million cap. But the reason it is smaller is it's a delegated authority program where we take lenders that show us that they have the experience and the wherewithal and the willingness to work with their small business exporter borrowers to provide financing. So in short, it provides financing much quicker. You know, typically with commercial loans, you might look at things happening in a matter of weeks or even months, whereas Export Express, since they can work with you directly and they have the authority to do the application, underwriting, and funding on their own, it can happen in a matter of days. And it's most flexible because it can be used for fixed assets. It can be used for export development. So maybe for some of those things that aren't covered by STEP, you might want to look at getting a line of credit for export development in order to fund those things. Next slide, please. The International Trade Loan Program is available up to the full $5 million cap through SBA. And this loan is for purchasing fixed assets, permanent working capital. That's the real intent of it. It does allow for permanent working capital, but it wouldn't be used for fulfilling export orders, which I'll get into in one of our final of the 3 programs. So the International Trade Loan Program, this is one that is available through all SBA lenders. They don't necessarily have to have delegated authority in order to provide you with up to the $5 million in financing. And the purpose of these programs is for the loan guarantee to provide an incentive to the lenders to make the loan to you. And those guarantees are up to 90% of the loan amount. So somebody earlier was talking about how lenders can be a bit nervous about doing business with exporters because it's tougher to collect on collateral. Well, that's the whole purpose of the guarantee. And to get into that detail with purchase orders, please go to the next slide. And we'll talk about the Export Working Capital Program, EWCP. This program is also on the large end of the scale. It can be used up to $5 million. But I'd also like to mention there's really no minimum for our loans. Typically, the lenders would require a minimum of, say, $100,000 because there are other separate programs below that amount. And some of the bigger lenders have a minimum $1 million requirement, but that's not always necessarily the case. We don't have minimums, we just have the maximum. So the Export Working Capital Program, this provides up to that 90% guarantee to the lender to support single transaction, multiple contracts, or revolving sales over the years. So this program, the $5 million, is specifically used to finance export orders. So you wouldn't use this program to fund soft costs such as export development. You would use Export Express to do that, the smaller program. You would not use this program for equipment or permanent working capital or real estate, that's what the International Trade Loan Program is for. This is the one where you have a foreign buyer, you need some help funding the fulfillment of that order. That's what the Export Working Capital Program is for. Next slide, please. Just to go over eligibility requirements, overall, in general, if you're not a billionaire yourself or have a billionaire on your board, our eligibility requirements are pretty generous. So generally less than 500 employees, less than $5 million in net income. If you're in business for profit, it's likely that you qualify for the program. And just check with your lender directly, check with me, and we can get into the weeds of that if you like. But basically, what you have to document is you're in business, you need this loan to fund expansion or entry into an export market. You have to provide projections, and in general, you have to do that for any kind of lending capacity. And you have to be specific about where you're going to do business. You can't just say, hey, I need $1 million because I think I can get $1 million in business from around the world. And also really important, linking back to Greg and his presentation, SBA and its lenders rely on Ex-Im Bank's country limitation schedule, and there's a link there in the slide. So you just want to make sure if you have a foreign buyer calling you from, say, Iran or North Korea, to go to that country limitation schedule and show, guess what, we can't do business with you. And there's different levels of restrictions on that. So make sure you're not wasting your time dealing with somebody in a prohibited country. And also, Greg did mention that there is a U.S. content requirement for Ex-Im Bank, but there is not for SBA's programs. So if you import widgets from Japan here to the United States and you put your packaging, make changes to it, do whatever to turn around and export it to, say, England or any other country that's not prohibited, it's likely it would still qualify for export financing. Next slide, please. And this one contains my direct contact information, my email address and phone number. And then if you want more general information, you can go to www.sba.gov/international, and that'll show all sorts of stuff beyond what I do with my colleagues around the country. So at this point, I think I will turn it back to Dr. Novak. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mike. It's great to hear how Small Business Administration has many programs to help these companies expand their business and provide guarantees to a bank. And the SBA has so many programs, and you folks are so supportive. Once again, I hope people will contact you if they have a small business and they'd like to do some work overseas. To close out our last session in support of attracting foreign investments, Manisha Vepa, Economic Research Analyst from the U.S. Department of Commerce, Select USA. She will share how to develop or increase economic investment in your region. Manisha, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Manisha Vepa, and I'm here to share some of the federal resources that you can leverage to support FDI attraction to your locality. Next slide, please. Today, I'll go through just a short overview of what Select USA is and some of the services we offer for EDO specifically. And then I'll look at the resources and tools we have freely available, as well as share one success story. Next slide, please. So Select USA, you can continue to the next slide. Select USA is a U.S. federal level program dedicated to facilitating and promoting high impact business investment into the United States. We provide services to two primary clients. The first is economic development organizations, or EDOs. And the second is existing and potential business investors. Specifically, when we work with business investors, we operate as a geographically neutral single window into the United States. Next slide, please. We provide four main services to EDOs. The first is market research. The second is events and mission support. The third is support navigating the federal system. And the fourth is investment project advocacy. In the next few slides, I'll go over these in more detail. So we can go to the next slide. So in terms of market research, Select USA investment specialists may provide detailed information, guidance, resources to an EDO to help the EDO devise its investment promotion strategy. This could look like a research report, or it could look like a slide deck, whichever one, depending on the level of data that you're asking for. Examples of these types of products could include data analysis on investment trends in specific industries or in the region overall, insights on the types of strategic product partners an EDO may consider partnering with, including local chambers, government organization, and industry associations. We can provide information on recently announced FDI projects or examples of recently announced FDI projects, and information about Select USA fee-based services. Next slide. In terms of events and missions, Select USA teams up with domestic and overseas offices to craft events that extend an EDO's global marketing reach and generate new business leads. These events are largely fee-based. Some types of events include single location promotion events, facilitated investment missions or roadshows. We also host an annual investment summit. Next year will be in June, and this is an opportunity where we invite EDOs and potential business investors to network and talk about different FDI strategies. We also provide other services ad hoc. Next slide, please. In terms of navigating the federal system, we are a one-stop shop for assistance in connecting with investors and EDOs with other officials at federal agencies to address questions and concerns. We do this both through ad hoc requests that come our way, but also through the Interagency Investment Working Group, which coordinates activities to promote business investment and respond to specific issues that affect business investment decisions. We lead this initiative, and there are over 20 participating bureaus and agencies, including Department of State, Department of Energy, Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, the Economic Protection Agency, Small Business Administration, and others. You can find more information about it at this link, selectusa.gov/IIWG. Next slide, please. Our final thing that we do is investment project advocacy. Specifically, if there is one U.S. location that is competing with a foreign location for an FDI project, Select USA will advocate for high-level U.S. government investment. Going back to our principle of geographic neutrality, if there are two U.S. locations that are competing for the same investment project, Select USA advocates for the United States as a country to remain geographically neutral. Next slide, please. So now I can go into some resources and tools. So these are the tools that we have available on our website that are freely accessible. So one is just data tools and resources. This one's not on our website, but we have it on our external SharePoint. These are up-to-date FDI PowerPoints, resources and location report flyers, client intake forms, and some investment promotion guidance, as well as some off-menu or ad hoc industry snapshots that we've put together. In addition to these other tools, we have fact sheets that are available. These are one-page summaries of foreign direct investment in 52 U.S. states and territories and from 40 plus countries. We have a dashboard called Select USA Stats, which has data visualization tools that gives you the latest FDI-related data from the Bureau of Economic Assistance, I believe, BEA. All you need is the country, industry, or state of interest, and you can pull together different charts to understand the FDI in location. And then the last thing we provide is the investor guide. This is a single document that provides an overview of what investors need to know in order to successfully bring their company to the US. It has about 10 chapters, I believe, and they're all written by experts in the field. So they cover topics such as taxes or setting up a bank account, and they're helpful for businesses that are starting their investment journey and looking for some initial guidance. Next slide, please. One of the new things that we offer is an EDO value proposition toolkit. It's available at the link at the site listed on the slide. This toolkit is a synthesis of best practices for targeting and clarifying an EDO's value proposition to attract FDI, identifying and engaging with partners to amplify the value proposition, and delivering an effective value proposition. So this is designed to help EDOs attract FDI and kind of guide them through some of the best practices we've seen through the partners we've worked with. Next slide, please. And then finally, I'll share one success story. This is with the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. And it was about an example of how the market research that we provided helped to attract local FDI to the locality. So we're looking at Rogers Corps, which was considering expanding its existing operations in Arizona. And when they were doing so, the Greater Phoenix Economic Partnership approached us for assistance. We provided data and evidence to help the EDO make the business case to Rogers Corps that this was the best location for their investment. And the corporation listened to the data and announced it would expand its manufacturing footprint in Chandler, Arizona, and now employs roughly 500 area residents. Next slide, please. If you have any questions, we have a general inbox that we monitor for any questions that come our way, and we'll direct them to the team member that's most appropriate to answer them. That's selectusa@trade.gov. You can also find your portfolio manager, whether that be someone who is working in your region or someone who's working with a market that you're considering. Selectusa.gov/contact us. Thank you.
Thank you, Manisha, for sharing how Select USA facilitates job creation and business investment in the U.S. To close out our investment session and this webinar, I'm excited to welcome Maria Honorato, Foreign Direct Investment Program Manager at GO-BIZ. Maria, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Novak. It's a pleasure to be here. I work on the international team at the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. You've heard today from my colleagues, Emily Desai and Mariana Guevara. My portfolio is to help international companies land in California and to engage with local economic development partners to help you attract the types of businesses you're looking for. We're very proud to be the #1 U.S. state for jobs supported by foreign-owned businesses in California. Those companies generate innovation and economic development, and they're really central to our state's success. As we recognize that strong cooperation with our local partners is crucial to maintaining our edge in attracting foreign businesses to California. That's why I'm going to spend the next few minutes explaining the wide array of resources that we have at the state level to help you attract high-quality foreign. Slide, please. I'd like to start with an overview of supports communities. We work directly with communities on business support. Many of you may have received RFIs from our business investment services team from companies that are seeking a location in California. We can also work with communities to help businesses in looking at your community, understand incentives that they may be eligible for. And we can help companies interested in your community understand permitting requirements, make connections at the state level to regulatory agencies, etc. We also want to make productive connections between our global and our local partners. So this could include helping international groups plan inbound delegations or engaging with local economic developers on initiatives that might have an international footprint. Of course, we also work very closely with other state agencies in California, and we're available to help our partners navigate the state government ecosystem. The last element I want to note here is our international newsletter, which comes out every month and flags events, trainings, and other announcements. Importantly, this newsletter has a section called Spotlight on Innovation. And I just want to note here that our state's world-renowned innovation ecosystem is a major draw for international companies. So if your community has any resources to support global founders, incubators, accelerators, lab space, a local university seeking partnerships, we would love to highlight that resource in the section of our newsletter. For a lot of global companies, they're seeking a little bit of extra hand-holding to land in communities, and those types of resources are such a draw for global companies that are really at the cutting edge of their respective sectors. Next slide, please. So when it comes to foreign investment, I want to provide a snapshot of what this really looks like statewide. As I've mentioned previously, California is the #1 U.S. state for jobs supported by foreign-owned businesses, and that investment really has an impact statewide. We have more than 635,000 California jobs supported by more than 18,000 foreign-owned companies, and those jobs pay an estimated total wage of nearly $70 billion. That's a statewide perspective. There are resources to help you understand the local impact within your community specifically. Next slide, please. Taking a dive on foreign investment data, there are some great resources looking at those international businesses in our state. Of course, the World Trade Center of Los Angeles produces an annual report on the investment footprint statewide. It does break the state into 3 large regions, snapshots of the footprints from individual countries in California. GO-BIZ is a proud sponsor of that report. And using that information, we're able to create customized local reports using data from the World Trade Center of Los Angeles. Those reports can showcase the total jobs, businesses, and unique source countries at the county level or the city level if that's of interest. And we can also showcase the top source countries and sectors for jobs supported by international businesses. I want to note a phenomenal resource that's been put together by our federal partners as well here. Select USA has created 13 community spotlight with the 13 regions of California. These are a terrific resource to understand elements in your community that may be a particular draw for global businesses. Those reports highlight greenfield projects, their value and source countries. They also industry clusters and innovation indicators by region. Those are available on our website, and they're a really excellent tool. Next slide, please. The previous speaker noted the Select USA Investment Summit, and just building upon those excellent community spotlight reports that our federal partners have put together, I want to note the summit, the Select USA Investment Summit, which is a really important part of our annual work supporting foreign investment attraction in California, and a wonderful area of partnership between our office and the federal government. California has a large presence at the USA Investment Summit. That event brings together economic developers and expanding international businesses seeking location. The next event is going to be taking place in June in California. GO-BIZ will bring a delegation to the summit. Geographic representation and diversity is really our key element there, and we do have an application process for any local economic developers seeking and joining the California delegation. Being a California delegate gives you access to our booth, which is among the largest at the Select USA Investment Summit, access to California-only events, which are very much in demand from international businesses. And it allows you to leverage the California brand, which of course is extremely popular among international businesses. In addition to the Select USA Summit itself, our office is also available to support spin-off events or other events taking place at the local level in which you're seeking to attract international businesses to your community specifically. Next slide, please. I want to share some resources here that we have created for international businesses. And our goal with these resources is really to pave the way between those companies and local partners. And I know we're short on time, so I'm going to try and move quickly here. We have a starter packet, which walks through the first steps to getting started, including how to register your business with the California Secretary, how to open a U.S. bank account, and more. We have fact sheets on our top 20 sources of foreign investment in California, including how it is distributed statewide. We have a business investment guide, which includes a directory of our incentives in California that's updated annually. And we have an international business success page where companies that have successfully landed in California tell their narrative, what brought them here. This is a really great resource because those stories intentionally highlight local resources that businesses have leveraged to help them succeed in California. So if you have any global companies in your community, please encourage them to submit a story to that success stories page, because we would love to highlight the local resources that benefited them. Next slide, please. I just want to note a couple of incentives in California that might be particularly of interest to international businesses. This is not a comprehensive list, but these incentives are for global companies. We have a California Compute Tax Credit, which is an income tax credit for businesses looking to locate in California. It's designed for businesses evaluating multiple locations and is certainly of interest for international companies that might be shopping around to find the right state. We have a partial sales and use tax exemption, which provides a sales tax exemption of about 4% for basic manufacturing equipment. This incentive really showcases our state's support for manufacturers. We have an employment training plan, which provides funding to employers to assist in upgrading the skills of their workers. Of course, talent is a major draw for international companies, so this incentive really highlights our state's commitment to developing our workforce. And we have a research and development tax credit, which is available to businesses that incur qualified research expenses in California. As I mentioned previously, a lot of global companies are interested in our state because of our support for innovation, so this tax credit is a major draw. Next slide. Thank you all so much for joining this conversation. I would be more than happy to connect with each of you to learn about your local foreign investment attraction strategies. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. That was great to hear how the state supports investment in businesses in California. Now we're coming towards the end of our time. We'd like to move into a question and answer period. And Bernadette, I wonder if you're there, you can perhaps read out some questions that have come through the chat.
Hi, Dr. Novak. Yes, thank you. I do see one question in the chat where someone was asking if the PowerPoint presentations would be sent out to all the participants.
Yes, they will.
Okay, great. Thank you. So please, I also see a hand raised. Let's see, that person who has their hand raised, would they like to ask that question? Unmute, are they able to unmute themselves and ask the question? Looks like that was Drew. Drew, do you still have a question? Looks like his mic is muted. Is he able to unmute himself?
He should be.
Okay. Well, we'll wait for Drew to see if he does have a question after all. I do see one here, which is, so I've been presented with a lot of information. What would you recommend the first place I start if I hear anyone saying anything like, I'm struggling with my sales, or I'm not sure what I should do next to grow my business? Does anyone on the panel like to answer that question real quick?
Would this be a business that is seeking to export overseas, or a locally based company that's looking to develop customer pipelines?
They didn't mention, but maybe address for either.
Well, I'm sure the folks who spoke previously about export support would say if this is a company that's seeking to develop customer pipelines overseas, there are a lot of resources to leverage there. When I get questions about international businesses that are looking to develop sales channels in California, we do let them know that we're not able to support the sales process for business. Our prerogative is really helping to create jobs in California communities. But of course, we understand that businesses need to have a good customer pipeline to expand. So we always like to note that our diversity, the size of our population in California really makes it a ideal place to find a customer segment that will work for your business.
Cool, thank you. Thank you for that.
Bernadette, if I can just add to what Maria just mentioned. So if, and this is more specific, if companies are, looking for a way to start, they can definitely contact their local U.S. Commercial Service Office. And, also because we have a lot of resources, and you can see we have a lot of great collaboration between the agencies, and we work together in being able to help the exporter, succeed. But definitely we can, U.S. Commercial is a great starting point, and we can provide the different resources and the next steps and help them through their export journey.
Perfect, thank you. I do see a hand up from Greg.
I was just going to say, in terms of starting the export process, first step might be to identify the market, that the singular most important potential market overseas for your product or service. And to get that assistance in identifying the best market, it might be your own personal connections, as where potential buyers who could connect you with other people. But if you don't have that, yes, obviously contact the U.S. Foreign Commercial Service, but you could also contact the Small Business Development Center in your area for export market research to help with things like, identifying the best foreign market, and then pricing your how are you going to get it overseas? Who are you going to sell it to? Are you going to end users? Or are you utilizing sales channels? And price the landed cost of your product once it gets there, and establish first whether it's price competitive in the market you've identified. Thanks.
Great. That's fantastic. And then also, of course, to always remember import banks, export credit insurance, in terms of being able to utilize that to offset any, non-payment and cover yourself against your foreign receivables. So thank you.
Bernadette, thanks so much for hosting the questions.
You can any other questions in the chat. So over to you.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we don't run out of time in our webinar and people who maybe have other commitments. If there are no other questions, in closing, I'd like to thank all of our speakers and encourage people to contact those speakers if they have further questions or they'd like some more information. Contact details are in their presentations. And again, at the end, thank EDA for inviting all of these incredible federal and state partners to share how each of them can help grow our businesses through exports and investment. And to everyone who's been such a great participant today, and all of you in the audience, have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you, everyone.